Okay, so we are recording. So let's go ahead and move on to the agenda. We're going to spend just a few minutes giving introduction and background. It's probably going to be more like 3 minutes instead of 10, but just a brief background about us and the topic of our presentation. Most of the time, we'll be going through the analytics best practices, pairing Tableau with your digital process automation platform, and then we'll save 20 minutes at the end for questions and answers. We really want to make this an interactive discussion where we're sharing best practices, you're asking questions, maybe sharing some thoughts and observations of your own. Really, the value in these meetup sessions, the way that I see it, is in the discussion and the networking that we get out of it. So if you could go on to the next slide. Just a little bit of background about us. My name's Neil Simpson, and I'm the founder and principal of InnoVelocity. On the phone with me today is today's presenter, Raymond Pineda, a senior consultant of ours who also specializes in Tableau. And our firm, InnoVelocity, was founded just over 14 years ago to specialize pretty much 100% in digital process automation and all the associated technology that goes around it, like Tableau, as well as leading RPA, document processing, and process management solutions. And we've notched up some good success stories in organizations of all different sizes and a variety of different verticals. And our customers give us great marks on our NPS surveys for being responsive, cost-effective, and technically adept. We're headquartered in San Francisco, but we've done projects with customers all over the US. Even before all this COVID stuff, we were very much a naturally remote first organization used to virtual collaboration. And our services include everything from quick start coaching and training and all the different technologies that we specialize in, including Tableau, as well as longer term program partnerships to help customers get their projects off the ground and deliver them from start to finish. But now with that brief background and sales pitch out of the way, I'd like to hand over to Ray to dive into today's topic. So Ray, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Neil. Appreciate the introduction. Let me start by telling a story about this particular picture before we get going on the main topics. A few years ago, our team was in the middle of a DPA platform conversion for one of our clients. We had just completed the migration of their corrective action request or CAR process, and a few months later, we were in a conference room with their VP of quality, who also happened to be the CAR process owner. Let's call him James, to demonstrate a Tableau proof of concept using data from their CAR process data repository. For context, 2 months prior, James had shared with us a 15-page, more or less, a PowerPoint slide deck that was his company's quarterly quality report. And it usually required James and a few of his associates about 2 to 3 months of work to produce. Each cycle would start with the export of data from their DPA database into an Excel file. And then, hope maybe familiar with most of us, then came the typical Excel gymnastics to manually transform the data from raw numbers to various graphs and charts. Spend a few days, maybe a couple weeks, disseminating what those charts were actually saying, and then finally the quarterly quality report is published and reviewed. So now we're in a conference room with James to show him a Tableau proof of concept based on his quarterly quality report slide deck. And after we were all seated, we projected onto the screen the visualizations of their CAR process data. And I said to James, hey, you're now seeing visualizations of your CAR process data in real time directly from your DPA data repository. And I knew we had James hooked when, after a few seconds of staring at the screen, he stood up from his chair, walked to the front of the room to the projector screen, continued staring at each chart, and then started pointing at areas of interest, and then just looking back to us saying, "Oh, wow, this is really cool." And then I started drilling down, clicking on each ones, right? So at that point, we knew we had him hooked. So anyway, so that's my story, and let's go on with the rest of the presentation. So here, you know, and Tableau has a lot of good documentation online in terms of how to do best practices. But you know, one of the things that DPA allows you to do is not only does it allow you to automate your workflows, but in the process, you're actually collecting a lot of data about your workflows. And so one of the things we can do is, hey, what do we do with this data that we're collecting? Yes, we're gaining efficiencies. We're no longer, you know, sending emails to each other, but we've got this data. How can we use it, right? And so utilizing these best practices in this iterative, repeatable cycle, one of the first questions we can ask ourselves is, hey, we've got data. So for example, the corrective action data. One of the things we can ask is, well, where are some of our issues coming from? Or how long is it taking me to close out some of these issues? Or what are some of the details I can drill down into? Or if you've got change requests, you can ask yourself, you know, what types of request types am I receiving into this system, right? So, but in order to answer those questions, one of the first things you have to ask yourself is, hey, where do I get the data, right? Where's my data stored? Is it in an Excel file that somebody keeps on their PC hard drive locally? Is it in a common data repository, whether it's a SQL Server database or an Oracle database or another type of cloud-based database? That's one of the first questions to ask. And then the next thing is, well, what does my data look like, right? Is it in just one flat file table, one gigantic table, or is it in a series of tables that have relationships to each other? And so those are one of the first things you would then need to ask. And then the beauty of a tool like Tableau, it then makes it easier for you to ingest the data once you understand where's your data coming from and what does your data look like. And so as an example here, I'm going to, you know, show you a few examples of some live data actually, right? So here, right, you can ask yourself, right, is your data just one simple table like this one, right? Just one table? Or does it have are there a few tables? And then do you understand the relationships of how to join those tables together to make sure you get meaningful data? Or you know, it could be, you know, a little bit more complex like this one. Or in another one of our examples here, it could also be like this one, right? It could also be like this one where it could be a series of tables that are joined together. So again, important to understand, where does your data reside? In all these examples, they're coming from a Microsoft SQL Server type of database. And then what does your data look like? So, okay. I'll pause here. Any questions people have? Okay, let's continue on. Next up after that is, now that you know where your data is coming from and what your data looks like, the next question is, how do you want to visualize that data, right? So, you know, there are different ways to visualize it, and tools like Tableau can quickly help you figure out how to convert those raw numbers into visualizations, right? Whether you're looking at, you know, length in terms of bar charts, using different shapes to visualize your data, or even colors, right? So again, understanding once you've gotten past that step of gathering your data, how do you want to visualize it? So, and then from there, and I'll get into some examples here in a moment, right? Then once you figure that out, then you can start viewing your data, which hopefully will start helping you to develop some insight from your data. And so I'll go ahead and flip back to some of my examples here again. And saying, hey, now that I've told my Tableau, hey, here's where my data is located and what my data looks like, right? I can then start to ask questions. Hey, what can I do with it, right? So in this particular case, I'm looking at some change requests, and I'm asking the question, forward-looking, how are we looking in terms of achieving our goals, in terms of meeting our stated implementation dates, right? Our service level agreement, right? And so we can convert it to a table, right? So now we've got a nice table with numbers, but one of the things we can quickly do though is convert that to a visualization, right? Sometimes pictures really are worth 1,000 words. So in this case, we've got a bar chart. The blue indicates, oh, okay, the work is done. We've got orange that says, okay, we still have some open requests, and we've got plenty of time there because we still have greater than 45 days to complete it. But this one's worrisome here, and it's the current month where we're now overdue, right? So now we've got some decisions to make. We've got a couple dozen records, a couple dozen cases saying, hey, we're now late here, right? So now a manager and their team can now figure out what to do next, right, as an example. So another example of visualization is, I've got a lot of requests. What type of requests am I receiving over time, right? And should I be, what can I do about those? But I think one of the first things to do is, okay, now we've got a table of numbers trending over time. So, but again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and now we're saying, okay, we were pretty stable over the first few years, but in the last couple of years, it looks like we've got some activity here, and it looks like we've got a lot more orange, a lot more of these orange bars. So what does that really mean, right? So, and the orange bars here are saying, hey, these are waiver requests. So it looks like we've been seeing a lot more waiver requests lately. So again, the management can go then ask the next question, well, why are we receiving more waiver requests? So it can spurn more action, right? So again, that's one insight you can glean from this is, for whatever reason, we've got more waiver requests, and it can trigger another set of tasks based on the fact that we are able to visualize the data. So, okay. Let's see, what else can we show here? Yeah, as I'm showing more examples, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. And the thing I will say, right, is this data is actually coming in real time from a business data repository. I've obviously obfuscated them just to show numbers for our demonstration here. So here we're looking at our process, but looking at, how are we doing in terms of delivering high quality requests here, deliverables, right? So we actually track error counts here. So we've converted the numbers into a chart, but what kind of insight can we glean here? So now we convert it to, a visualization here, right? The first row says, these are the number of new policies we're putting in. Second row is saying, okay, we've made some updates to existing policies. We've archived some policies that are no longer relevant or have been retired. And then down here, we look at the error count based on the work we've done. And an insight potential insight here is, hey, in Q1 of this year, right, we had a high number of error rate. What's driving that, right? It's not necessarily obvious that it's volume driven, but it's definitely a signal of something, right, for the management team again to go after. So, and again, picture is worth 1,000 words. Easier to see once you visualize the data as well. So, okay.
I have a quick question for you actually on this.
Yes.
So with Tableau, it seems like there are so many different ways that you could potentially present data, like all kinds of different options, different types of paper, even the colors, like you mentioned, like you have, it seems like tons of flexibility there. So how do you pick what's most impactful or most easy to read or most likely to lead to an insight? Is there an example like of a best practice or how you go about deciding that?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the strengths of a tool like Tableau, right? Let me go to another one that we have, right, where we have again, this is similar to a corrective action request process. We call it structured problem solving. It's one of the starter processes that InnoVelocity has, and we've demonstrated in the past, right? So here we have our data model. So I'm actually walking you through the process. I've already made the connection to the database. I've already set up the data source based on the data model of the process workflow. And so one of the first things here is, right, you can create you create a worksheet in Tableau. And one question I may be asking is, hey, what is driving, or what kind of issues am I looking at potentially, right? So I can look at, source versus systemic action as an example, right? So again, drag and drop, I can just move this here, and then looking at case counts as an example, right? So now I have well, that's not quite what I was looking for. It gave me literally what the case number is, but what I want is a count of the distinct case numbers to give me a better handle of what I might be seeing, right? So now I've got a simpler table here. Let's just rotate this label to make it easier, right? So again, right, just start with your data source, go to a worksheet, and then ask yourself the initial question, what kind of information or insight do I want to get into in this case, right? I'm looking at where are my issues coming from and what types of issues are they, right? Are they related to best known methods? Are they related to, lack of doing a failure modes and effects analysis to close the issue, and so forth, right?
One thing, just to clarify, is it sounds like from the first step, like selecting your data source, if we're playing the role of a system designer, I'm not sure how many other folks on the call are involved in designing systems, designing processes, designing workflows. It sounds like it's really important to know in advance what kind of reports you need to generate so that you can design your data model to contain the appropriate information, right? Because you're showing me an example here where you're able to Pareto out issues by these different categories, but you need to know those in advance. Is that fair to say, or is there a...
No, that is definitely a good point, Neil, right? So one of the things I'm showing here... Oh, yes.
Just to get straight with Neil, are you assisting other companies in creating data for them or creating this Tableau for them?
Yeah, I think if I understand the question correctly, Alfred, one of the things that our company does is helps them build Tableau dashboards or reports on top of data sources that they already have. But we're also typically involved in helping them to design the workflows and the systems in the first place. So I would say it is a best practice of ours to typically have the report designed as part of the requirement for the system that we're building. so that we're building in the appropriate data collection right from the start. Because otherwise, if you have to go and patch that in later, especially if you're already in production, you're going to have gaps and holes in your data.
Well, if you're assisting other companies, you will be receiving data from them, and you'll put the most data that's relevant to them. Wouldn't that be what you'll be working on? You're not going to be creating a Tableau spreadsheet for something that you want to do yourself. You're going to be creating a Tableau worksheet where it's going to be significant for their company, isn't it?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, that's right. So sometimes folks who are not using Tableau will need some help building the initial reports. But I think the vision of Tableau is that it's easy for people to build reports once the appropriate data structure is there and established. So I think that's one of the lessons that Ray's highlighting, is that, you know, building the report and selecting the visualizations is one thing, but before that, you have to have the appropriate data structure thought out and in place to enable the report. So I think maybe, Alfred, I'm not sure if that's answering your question or not, but maybe we can hold that, because we are going to have a discussion at the end where, you know, folks can share their questions and their own observations about what they're doing. But yeah,
I was just trying to answer your question that you asked previously.
Yeah.
You was asking where would we mainly concentrate our data from, and if we're working with companies that are sending us data, we're gonna concentrate the spreadsheet or the Tableau workstation to satisfy whatever need they're looking for.
Right.
No, that is definitely the case here, Alfred, right? The examples here I'm showing you are the result of collaboration with our clients as well, right? Like I said, these are, you know, the various dashboards I've shown you already. You know, if I go back to this one, right? These three dashboard examples that I've shown you, these are actually live in production with the company. Obviously, for this presentation, I've obfuscated the, you know, some of the numbers, the actual absolute values of the raw numbers. But, you know, what the trends and insights that can be gleaned from here are exactly what our clients are seeing here as well, right? So again, this was in close collaboration with them. We started off with these tables, and they said, well, you know, is there a better way to visualize this, right? Because our colleagues over there are presenting to, you know, their director and VP levels as well, right? So, and, you know, this chart is just one of a few that we've helped create for them. And then every quarter they do go into Tableau and look at these visualizations, and then, you know, extract them and stick them into PowerPoint presentations as necessary, or show them in real time as well. So. And then definitely going back to your earlier comment, Neil, regarding the data model. Yes, you know, I've been kind of going from the ground up here, but as in, you know, one of the things we do with our clients is when we develop these workflows for DPA implementation, is one of the check boxes we look at is, hey, what kind of reports do you want to see, right? And that helps us work with them to define what the data model should look like. So, and this is an example of that in terms of, well, we have some basic case data, but we also want to understand, you know, we want to collect problem statements, we want to collect various dates throughout the cycle, so that we can figure out what our closure times are. We also want to collect what types of issues, right? You know, I think one that we were looking at was, case history is important, right? And initially, case history was not something that was built into the draft data model. So that was something after discussion, we said, hey, let's include case history in there as well, right? If we had not included that, it would have, retrofitting it, not impossible, but definitely more difficult after a process has gone into production. So, okay. So then here, just kind of continuing the flow there. So next step is, well, what's a good way to visualize this? Well, let's see what they can share. And the nice thing about Tableau is, right, and similar tools is they've got ways to just, experiment, right? This is the actual visualization, I have here, but you can click, you can experiment with the different types of visualizations they have. So, but I usually like to keep it simple unless there's a real need to give you a complex visualization. So here's one, and let's sort it from largest to smallest just to give us a Pareto. And what does it actually show us? Well, it's the top three look like they're related to our clients' supplier base themselves, right? What we typically call sub-suppliers, right? Whether it's at an issue with the supplier themselves, or one of the clients' auditors going into a supplier factory and finding issues, or identifying some improvements, right? So, so this tells them, hey, our purchasing team, has their work cut out for them in the short and medium term here. So, as an example of an insight, and then they can start to ask those questions. Well, what kind of issues do we need to focus on, right? Because a purchasing department has limited personnel, so they need to make sure they know how to focus those resources, and that can be the subject of the next round of questions you can ask, right? Ask a new question, get the data, and then visualize something else. So, okay. So I think the next step is, right, we go in, we go through this cycle, we ask. Now, as a last step is, it's one thing for me to create all these visualizations, but the power is in sharing them. And so one of the things that you can do is, you can distribute the workbook file, or you can export it to a PDF. But another thing you can do is publish them to a server, right? A Tableau server, right? And so you can go online, log in, and if you click, it's actually connected in real time to the database, and you can pull data in real time. So to your point, Alfred, right? This is an example of working with the client to say, hey, what kind of visualizations am I interested in? And let's create the visualization from the data. If we're not collecting the data, let's make that an action item to figure out how to collect the data, right? So here we're looking at severity, right? In terms of, did it cause lines down, or did it cause a large problem, or is it, a minor nuisance, right? Closure time, here they're probably hovering around, 23 days, is that good enough? Maybe for now, but, over time I'm sure they would want to see this decrease, and then they can figure out, what kind of issues are creating these cycle times, or are there any opportunities where we can reduce it, right? Again, earlier I had shown you the source one that was as one of the examples. So here's that source slide that I had shown earlier, and then locations, and then for additional details, there's also case list as well as case history here as well. And then one of the nice things you can do with a tool like Tableau is it allows you to do some drill downs, or some, if you click on here as an example, you can use it as a filter to figure out, a subset of your data to focus on there, right? In this case, this one is in May. Those particular set of cases had a 23-day closure time. And here's a subset of that case list if I wanted to drill down even further in terms of, okay, if I wanted to go in and say, okay, are there any commonalities here that I can look at, or are there any more insights I can go in by going into each of these specific cases? But by drilling down, you've now narrowed it from 100 cases to, about a dozen cases to look at as well. And then some basic case history in terms of, some cycle, how long did each phase of the process take, right? Clearly documenting root cause and solution, that seems to be one that can take a while, right? In this case, 2 weeks, another one took 21 weeks. So is there opportunity there? You can also look for opportunities in terms of, are there ways to reduce cycle time in the administrative non-technical areas, right? How to reduce waste, right? It's, definitely the root cause and resolution type can take long, right? But are there other ways we can improve the process, as an example? So
it sounds like, looking at this, Ray, a best practice might be to combine then kind of the visual data, like the charts up top for summary, but to provide tables underneath that have kind of the detail behind, so that people can actually explore the data.
Yes, definitely. And the other thing that you can do here is, of course, not when I want to do it, it won't do it. You can actually export the data as well. So, right, we can go down here, right? You can click download, and it'll allow you to download the picture, some of the raw data in CSV format, or directly into a PDF, right? So again, one of the nice things about these tools is not only do they give you access in real time to the data, to your data repository, not only can give you real-time visualization, but you can also download the data, right? You want to do your own analysis that requires further investigation as well. So.
Sure. Your guy, James, instead of spending months putting together that PowerPoint, can just click the download to PowerPoint button. It's there, I guess, right? So that's cool.
Yeah. And then, so you'll have those pictures ready to, copy and paste into your own presentation to management as necessary as well. So.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, just a quick time check. We're at half past the hour, so we should probably move on to the discussion aspect of our meetup, where folks are kind of discussing their own observations. That's typically what we do in these types of meetings, is we set the stage with a topic, talk about some best practices, but then again, the real value is in the interaction between folks, because you all have different experiences, I think, different levels of knowledge with these types of things. So what I'd like to do is actually just have everyone give kind of a brief introduction of themselves and their experience with Tableau or with similar analytics, and then we can discuss together as a group what questions or observations we have. So we'll start just going from the top. I can see we've got Aaron here. Aaron's a member of our team, but Aaron, you want to introduce yourself real quickly?
Sure. Yep. I work with Ray on several projects, and I've been with the Velocity as a program project manager and developer for 5 years now.
Awesome. Alfred, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly and tell us a little bit about your experiences with Tableau?
Yeah, I'm a graduate of Thinkful. I just completed the Thinkful course. One of the programs that we use with Tableau. That's also we also included SQL, Excel, Power BI, and Microsoft SQL Server. So right now, like I said, I just finished that course, and I'm in the middle of looking for employment.
Well, welcome. It sounds like you do have a little bit of kind of learning theoretical experience with Tableau then, but now you're looking to take that into practical uses, it sounds like. So.
Yes, actually I used it more extensively than what you're describing here. We not only looked at where the different areas of improvement could be done in a company. I also did a project for my class where the company was spread throughout the United States, and one of those slide presentations or graph presentations, you have a map that you could show the production rate in whatever part of the country that the company is separated in. And you could show which part of the country is more productive, which is less productive. How can you improve on that productivity in the ones that are less productive?
That sounds really cool. Very cool. All right, well, let's move on to the next person then. We've got another person, Dave McCampbell here. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi guys, thanks for hosting this. My name is Dave McCampbell. I'm about 5 months into data analytics. I'm new and into it, and I have a background as an underwriter for 20 years, and I'd like to know, I've got a cursory background with Tableau that I got in Thinkful as well. I took the cohort with Alfred there, and one thing I found useful was beginning a project, and I'd throw the data set into Tableau to kind of get a visual idea of what null hypothesis I'd want to begin with when running like a t-test or something, for example. Does anyone else do that? Because when I just stare at columns of data and whatnot, I kind of, get stuck or get refrigerator eyes, and paralysis ensues, kind of thing. And I found it much easier for me to visualize things and then be able to get a start that way.
Yeah, thanks, David. No, that's a great observation. I don't know, Ray, if you have kind of experience doing it that way too, but I mean that's an interesting way to explore the data as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, Tableau is just a tool, right? And its power comes from when you apply it, using various approaches. So, I mean, I come from a manufacturing background where, a lot of us in my past, I've taken various statistics courses, and one of the key things that our instructors always said is, try to get your data from the raw state into some kind of a visual state as quickly as you can, because and then ask yourself that initial question, what is my initial hypothesis, and then let's see what the data tells us, and then you can continue to refine your hypothesis, or it may tell you, right, you're asking the wrong question, in your head, right, and this is the actual question you need to do. So, no, I like hearing that, Dave. It's really just saying, hey, Tableau by itself, while it's a great tool, its power comes from the fact that you can use it, with different approaches, different techniques. So.
Also, that's the first time I heard the term refrigerator eyes. I like that. I'm going to use that in future. So thanks for that.
I'll add that to my dictionary.
Yeah. And then we have Peyton Taylor on the line as well. Peyton, you want to give a brief introduction as well?
Yeah. Hey guys. In terms of my background, I have a little bit of background in Tableau. I've used Tableau in a couple internships a handful of years ago, but I do most of my visualizations in R, and I just started a master's program in business analytics, so trying to get into data strategy, less on the technical side and more on, learning about different tools and how to bring them together to help organizations, drive their data strategy and whatnot. So that's kind of my background. I'm learning Power BI as well. So just kind of getting familiar with more tools and their capabilities.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for joining. It sounds interesting, actually. Most folks who've attended have mentioned that they're looking at both Tableau and Power BI. And one of the things that I find myself asking, or find myself getting asked a lot, is what would be the relative pros and cons between the two, or why would you choose Tableau versus Power BI other than the price? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Like, if you're using both, do you find one to be better than the other in some ways?
Well, with Tableau, you could use, it doesn't matter the database program that you create your data with. You could download basically any database to Tableau. I haven't seen that compatibility with Power BI as of yet, but I just started Power BI, and Visual also, in Visual Studios, doesn't have the compatibility as Tableau does so far.
That's a good observation. Is that what other folks are finding as well when you're looking at it? It's kind of more of a compatibility thing.
I think for me, it's more when I just got into Power BI a couple months ago, but I think that in terms of the data transformation capabilities, I know that, a data structure has to be set up, and then you connect Power BI Tableau to those data structures, and that's what allows you to make clean visualizations. But I've worked with a lot of like unclean data sets, and Power BI has to me more capabilities to transform the data within the platform, clean it up rather than the data needed to be like perfectly clean, set up structured data. I think Power BI handles that a little bit better, but I haven't quite explored that component in Tableau. That's just based off of, my couple months of using both platforms.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point too, Peyton. I think Ray touched on it a little bit during his presentation, but kind of the preparation of the data coming in. It's obviously ideal if the source that you're pulling from has been prepped and designed with the reports that you're trying to build in mind. I mean, that's certainly a best practice that we do when we're building systems for people, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you're looking at a data set that is unclean, dirty, not structured as well as you would like. And the transforming of the data sounds like it's kind of an important step. Do you have some examples of that, Peyton, like some of the cleanup that you do within the platform? Is it doing things like just changing data types so that you're changing things that might be string data into numeric data, for example, or formatting dates, or is it more involved than that?
It's that, and it's also a little bit more involved. Say if you have like, in one example that I have, there was like a keywords column in this data set that had, an ID code, another tag that would say what type of document and what, all in one essentially cell or column, and splitting that data up into splitting that keywords column into all the different categories that were jumbled in, say, this paragraph of words and unique identifiers all in one column. So that, like, splitting columns, say changing word types, capital letters, making all lowercase letter, or making words that are capital and lowercase letters into all capital or all lowercase, removing punctuation, things like that.
That's cool. Those are great examples, actually. It sounds like, I personally don't have a lot of experience with Power BI myself, but it sounds like they have good visual tools that make that easier. I'm guessing maybe in Tableau, you have to go in and customize like SQL statements to do the same thing, which can be a real pain.
Yeah, I think that's the way it was in the past, and I think Tableau recognizes that, right? Because I think they've added a new module called Tableau Prep, which essentially, is designed to do the data cleanup that Peyton was describing. So I think they implemented that about a couple of years ago. And before then, right, that there's another company called Alteryx that basically performed a similar function where it sits between your analytics tool and your data repository. It ingests the data, and then you can use that tool like Alteryx and now Tableau Prep to do the data cleanup. Similar things that Peyton was describing before ingesting it into your analytics tool, whether it's Power BI or Tableau Prep. I mean, that's a huge thing, and I think Tableau recognized that because a lot of their customers a few years ago were relying on third-party tools like Alteryx to do that. So
yeah.
Yep.
I think that could be like a fascinating topic in of itself, is like how to clean up or sanitize data that's not clean, because you don't really have control over it. I mean, that could be a good topic for a future webinar, even potentially, to really deep dive on what all the different tools are that can do that and some of the best practices for it. So that's a good one, Peyton. For the rest of the folks on the line, are there other types of topics like that you'd be interested in exploring more deeply in future? Because this is obviously a very introductory topic, but I bet there are things like that that are worth exploring in depth. Do you all have any thoughts on that, like kind of things you would like to learn more about or explore more deeply?
I have a question. Or a topic that I'd like you guys to explore, because it seems like with your company, you kind of do some of this, but in terms of these visualization tools, Tableau, Power BI, integrating with these other databases within whatever organization you're working with, does that process go more along the lines of you working with Tableau and the Tableau license of the company to integrate, or is it your guys' own IT team connecting that? Does that make sense?
Oh, I think so. And that might be kind of along the lines of what Alfred was asking maybe earlier as well. That could be another way of looking at that question. But yeah, typically when we're working with a customer, they've purchased and provisioned their own licenses, and they would allocate a license to us. And generally speaking, they're using, and Ray, you can correct me on the terms because Ray's much more experienced with Tableau than I am, but you have the creator and the explorer types of licenses, right? And you can provision that on premise or in the cloud. So a lot of our customers are provisioned on premise, and they give us the creator licenses to build dashboards for them, train them on how to kind of build similar dashboards for themselves or maintain them, and then they kind of take over from that point. But I don't know, Ray, if you want to add more insight on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can add, as you said, right, we typically work with our client, and if they already have a Tableau infrastructure in place, or in some cases sometimes they have both, right, Tableau, Power BI, and then we go choose which one we want to focus on. And then, we usually allocate a license for the duration of the work that we do with them. And then again, in terms of the acting and sharing, the smaller companies, will set up a server, and they'll allocate licenses based on who has the critical needs for them. Larger companies will typically have a different licensing model, like a core-based licensing model, where it's based on their infrastructure, and they can afford to have a bigger infrastructure. And so essentially anyone who has a network account can view. They don't necessarily need a specific license because it becomes an enterprise license at that point. So again, it just depends. And then I think kind of something that Peyton had mentioned earlier as well, right, is sometimes depending on the needs, if a small company may, start off some of their proofs of concept in Tableau, but if they have the need for, large scale larger scale users, as a smaller company, they may have to go through to some other off-the-shelf solutions as well for some of the standardized stuff, like a small manufacturing house where they can't necessarily afford to buy viewer licenses for all of their manufacturing personnel. So they may do their prototyping in Tableau, but then they migrate that into a more cost-effective platform as well. So it depends on the client's needs.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that the integration component is manual? Sorry about that. Is manual, or is kind of automated? Once a license is there, then it's on Tableau and your team to integrate, or are you guys saying that you guys do that manually? But between a live database, not just because I'm used to taking an Excel sheet and connecting that to Tableau rather than having the data be live. That's kind of the area that I'm wanting to learn more about.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely connect your Tableau desktop application to the database, and do your analytics. I think it's in the sharing piece of it where you have to decide how you want to disseminate, right? You can, again, just kind of share a workbook file that people can, if they have Tableau on their PC, they can open it themselves, or you can share it through like a PDF. The other way is you can buy a Tableau server license and then you can publish them. And then that published workbook will connect real time, or you can set it up on a extract schedule, right? Just to kind of, maximize performance is, maybe on a weekly basis, you extract a local snapshot to a local snapshot of the data. But so those are the types of things we do work with the client on is, what are the use cases, right? Is it going to be you're going to do analysis and then share with a limited team, or do you want visibility of a certain set of dashboards to the entire company, in which case, you'd want to publish to like something like a Tableau server, or Tableau has a cloud version as well. So it just depends on the use case, and those are the types of things we discuss with the client. And we can help set it up initially, and then train their people to, as they to scale up, right? Create their own dashboards, teach them how to publish, and do all the different things that they need. And by the way, right, they don't necessarily have to just hook up to databases. If you create a file share where Tableau can access an Excel file, that'll work too, right? Or even a SharePoint list.
Yeah,
right? Tableau will do that too. I think Power BI does that too, but it just depends on your use case, and sometimes a simple Excel file that's manually maintained by a few people, that can actually work too. So
very good, very good. All right, well, we've got a little bit less than 10 minutes remaining, so I'll ask if anyone else has any other questions or future topics that they would like to see addressed in other webinars, or something we might be able to address really quickly right now. Well, we'll take silence as golden. Well, thank you all so much for attending this meetup. It is unfortunate that they still have to be virtual. We like to get together in person in San Francisco when we can, and hopefully we'll be able to resume that in the near future. But in the meantime, what we're going to do with this, it was recorded, so we're going to post this session up on the meetup group. If you'd like to review the recording, you can do so. If you have any other follow-up questions for us, you can also reach out through Meetup, or you can contact Ray or myself at neil@innovelocity.com or Raymond@innovelocity.com. And we'll hope to see you at some future sessions. Thanks again, folks. Bye.
Thank you.